On the Run with Beards and Dunn. Here we are, Beards. Episode number, I haven't got a clue. I haven't been keeping track of these things. I know it's been a bunch, but, how are you? Before we get into running and some of that stuff, how's your knee situation doing?
Well, so I went back to the surgeon yesterday, which would have been on Tuesday, and he didn't want to take the stitches out yet. Another 10 days, and he's still a bit concerned about the way things look. And so then I met with the infectious disease doctor, just got back from there, and she wants to keep me on IV antibiotics for another 3 weeks because she's also concerned because the knee, I don't have to have a bandage on it anymore, but it's
We don't want to see it.
It's red, yeah, and it aches and it burns a little bit, but hey, other than that, I'm doing good.
Well, at least they're saying, okay, this isn't working. They didn't say that.
Right.
Let's give this antibiotics more chance, your own immune system more chance.
Right. And I think what they're a little concerned about, the last surgery I had, they took the stitches out 2 weeks after. Gosh dang thing opened up again.
Yeah.
And so that's the challenge. And if it opens up this time, then they might have to try putting a flap over it or something. I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Get some Gore-Tex or something. I don't know.
And it's getting cold up here, Mikey.
Oh, Beards. Anyway, well, I love the smile on your face, and so I know you're doing okay. Because if you're not smiling, it's hurting bad or something like that. So, cool. Well, Beards, kind of to bring us up to speed, we finished 1982. And unfortunately for you, it didn't end on a high note.
No.
With New York, your Achilles tendon is bad.
Yep.
You ended up getting it casted to give it a chance to heal on its own, I guess. And then we had the story about the Honolulu Marathon of you having to get the cast cut off because your big toe was going to blow off the end of your foot or something like that. And so you got the cast off. So just to kind of wrap that up, did you get back home, go back? Oh, they put another cast on, didn't they?
Yeah, they put another cast on.
All right.
And so then, I was riding a stationary bike. I was on the farm at that time. I was shoveling snow up behind the barn to try to keep my cardiovascular, part of me going strong.
I have a picture.
And I remember some company sent me this mask thing. And it looked like a small scuba diving
the PO2
simulator. Yeah, and it was supposed to be like you're at 10,000 foot altitude.
Yeah, it would filter out the oxygen from the air, but not all of it. Obviously,
right.
You'd suffocate. But I remember I have a photo, and I've been looking for it. I know it's in a scrapbook. I'll find it someday. But we were there visiting you, and you went down in the basement of your farmhouse, and I can't describe it, but it was a dank, dark, cold. It looked like a basement of a farmhouse.
It did.
And you had a stationary bike, which was not a primo model. It was just a bike, a stationary
Walmart
bike.
special.
And Beards, I have a picture of you like with 2 warm-up suits on. I swear you had a stocking hat over your head. You're wearing this PO2 simulator.
I look like an
you're
alien.
Looking at me because I think I snuck down there with the camera. I don't remember you having a TV or a radio.
No.
You would go down there for like an hour or so.
Right.
And I guess you were just dedicated, determined, to try to keep your cardiovascular fitness up. You could pedal a darn bike without hurting your Achilles.
Right.
But trying to maintain your condition.
Exactly. And then, I'd go out behind the barn and I'd shovel snow and I'm not making this up. So I've told this story a number of times, but typically my Sunday mornings were my long run. So I would go out behind the barn. Honest to gosh, Dunn, I would shovel snow back and forth into piles for 2 to 2.5 hours.
Your long shovel.
Yeah, so that was my long shovel. Then Mondays I do an easy recovery shovel. Tuesday I do like 10 times 2-minute real fast shovels as fast as I could with like a 2-minute easy recovery shovel in between. Wednesday was a medium long shovel. Thursday was like a little bit of fartlek shoveling. Friday was an easy day. And then Saturday, I'd do a 10K shovel. I'd warm up for like 15 minutes, and then I'd shovel as fast as I could for like 30 minutes.
I tell you. Well, I'm glad that's a great lead in. I think what I'd like to do today, and I kind of bumped this off of you previously, just see what your thoughts were, but, let's kind of back up the truck a little bit. And, when we've had a few people request some, a little more information about training.
Yeah.
Training principles. There's the physical aspect of training, and then there's the mental aspects of training, which I think you were just kind of alluding to. And anybody who's not shoveled snow with a scoop shovel, let me tell you, that'll get your heart pounding and your lungs.
No kidding.
Sucking wind, man. And
Big time.
Every muscle in your body, it seems like it has to work when you're shoveling
I had
snow.
Popeye arms when I was done.
And that's why I hate to say this, but a lot of out of shape people go out and shovel snow, and it doesn't end well for them,
right?
Because it's so taxing on their heart, their cardiovascular system. Unfortunately, it's not a joke, but people do die.
You bet.
Because they didn't know they had an underlying problem because they never exert themselves that hard to find out. Usually, if you exert yourself a little bit, you get some warning signs, which is nature, God's way of saying, you better get this checked out, buddy. But when they go out there and shovel snow, it just hits them like a freaking sledgehammer, and the warning sign, they don't get nothing, and they fall over. But, I kind of wanted to back up a little bit, and so, we've covered a lot of ground. We've covered 5 years. We started this back. Our first episode was, I think, it's been longer than that now. Your junior year of high school would have been like 74.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we started with that. So now we're up
Well,
to
actually, the fall of 73.
Okay, so late 73, and we've gone through late 82. So I guess we've actually covered about a 9-year stretch now. And, when you think about where you came from, and me too, where we both came from, to where we're ending, 9 years later, I'm just going to cut right to it, Beard. You're at the pinnacle. I mean, when you were, you ran 208 with Alberto. First time two people in the same race broke 209.
Right.
And I just saw the other day there were 3 Americans broke 209, and they highlighted the fact that that's the first time that's ever happened. In fact, they said it's the first time since Dick Beardsley and Alberto Salazar in 1982 when 2 Americans broke 209 in the same race. Well, obviously, I think it was Chicago where they...
That's crazy. That's 40-plus years ago.
Yeah, the first time that we had 3 Americans, you were the first 2 Americans to do it. Now we finally got 3 guys under, and, of course, it was a perfect day on a great course with all the super shoes. And so not to belittle their performances at all, but I still wonder what you and Alberto would have done with a perfect day on a flat course with super shoes on. But, and so, there's a lot of ground got covered in those 9 years, figuratively and literally. And so I'm going to back up. Let's go back to high school. You started running as a junior, it sounded like.
Yes.
Really kind of, and I started as a 9th grader in track. But our training, I'll start with me, and then and then we'll go to you. Mine was, I blessed Gene Borman's heart. He was our cross-country and track coach, and Gene was a quasi-runner in high school and college. He said he never had any outstanding performances, but he was a smaller stature kid, athlete, and running was really his only, basketball, football wasn't an option for him.
Sure.
Wrestling wasn't something on his radar like it wasn't on mine. And so he kind of drifted into running, and then he became a biology teacher. He also loved athletics. He was an athletic manager, he said, for like a lot of the high school teams. And he was, if you're not good enough to be on the team, but I want to be part of the team.
Right.
I want to help the guys, And
hey, that's an important part.
Oh, it's a critical role. Nobody goes through life and is a success totally independent on their own.
Exactly.
And we all need help and people that are willing to help, and that's so cool. And so he, bless his heart, motivated guy, loves sports. But I think he would admit, his coaching expertise was fairly, I don't know, you read it in books or if they,
sure.
They even go to a few workshops, but, and I'm just going to cut to the chase. Our workouts were pretty short. You'd run a mile or 2, maybe. I don't ever think we ran much farther than about 2 miles. And then we do like intervals, 4 400s with I think we took full rest between each one, because you'd run it as hard as you could. You thought you were going to puke, and then you'd stand around and go, all right, you guys, are you feeling all right? All right, do it again. And you'd do it again. And after about 4 of those, we're like, yeah, okay, good job. Head back go get a shower. And we'd probably take a shortcut back to the high school rather than run the full mile or whatever it was. And then you go run races off of this. And but I don't think anybody else had a secret formula that they were doing. This is the early 70s. And it's just the way it was done. It was kind of survival of the fittest. And I think the natural talented guys kind of rose to the top because it wasn't like, I'm trying to think how to say this. It wasn't like you took a raw kid and through good training principles, brought him up to a high level of performance. I think the guys that were doing well under those circumstances would have done really well with a really well-structured formal team.
Absolutely.
They were just talented guys. And there's always talented athletes out there. And that, until I went to those running camps, and then I learned a lot about training and running and base training. And I give Gene Borman credit. My junior to senior year, we went off to a race in Dickinson, North Dakota. I ended up living there years later. And it was the Junior Olympics regional. I qualified to go to the regional Junior Olympics. I ran a 4:32 mile my junior year. And I won the state Junior Olympics. And that qualified me to go to this regional, which was hosted in North Dakota. And never been to Dickinson. And man, it was a 5.5 hour drive up there.
Right.
And we stayed in dormitory. Anyway, long story short, we had a 5.5 hour drive back that summer. And he and I sat down with a yellow notepad. And I kind of paraphrase. He goes, Mike, let's come up with some ideas. What are your thoughts about some workouts for this fall for cross country? And, I credit Gene. He was my father figure. He was a coach. He was an authority figure. But he was open-minded enough to say, I'm willing to listen to what you've been to these camps. You've been running for 2 years pretty steadily. What are your thoughts and what do you think we should do? And he and I sat down and wrote out workouts.
That's pretty cool.
It was. I was very impressed. I was happy he asked.
Yeah.
And we came up with a plan and we followed it and it worked well. And he says to this day, he shared that program with other coaches and there's still coaches using it. I should get a kickback. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
It sounds great. So Gene was, kind of got help. His key thing was motivation, made it fun, got us to the races, kept us focused. It wasn't just a bunch of guys out there goofing off all the time. He made sure we were getting our work in and stuff. And so that got me through high school and I ended up doing fairly well. How about you? What was your high school? I've heard some stories about your coaches, about smoking and stuff. And
yeah, my high school coach, he was an English teacher at school, and he wasn't a runner that I recall. Later in his life, I think he kind of took up running, but back then they needed a body to coach a bunch of skinny guys. We didn't have girls on the cross country team yet until my senior year, so we'd probably run, 3 to 5 miles after school, and then we'd play touch football for like 45 minutes.
We shot a lot of basketball too.
Yeah, and I don't ever remember doing anything on the track or anything like that, but and I wasn't very good, but when I really started kind of noticing is that summer between my junior and senior year. So I'd gotten done with my fall season in the fall of 1973 for cross country. I didn't run track the next spring, but I had set a kind of a goal for myself, and I ran every single day done that summer. And I came back, for my senior year of cross country, and I went from, not making the team to being the number one runner, which now I'm not bragging. It's not saying a lot. We didn't have this great team, but I thought, wow, that just kind of really paid off. And I remember when I was a senior in high school, I started running then during my study halls also, plus the afternoon workout. My study hall was in the morning. And I also tried playing hockey. And I remember my hockey coach, Coach Schaefer. So that fall, he goes, Beards, now that you're a senior, you can't play on the JV team in hockey anymore. So he goes, I see you running every morning during study hall. He goes, maybe you ought to put a little more emphasis into your running. Done?
You want to boot you off? Yeah.
It's some of the best advice I'd ever got. I haven't had a pair of skates on since.
Let's back this up. I think what I'm hearing here, and I agree 100%. And if people are wondering, I ran twice a day between my junior and senior year. Now, that sounds like, whoa, that's a lot of running. I did a 4-mile run. I ran around my section, and let me tell you, that 4-mile run was aerobic. It was like, I wasn't running as fast as I could do it because that would just burn you out. But I would get out there, and I wouldn't say I was dog trotting, but I wouldn't say I was hammering. But every afternoon, typically, probably 3 to 4 days a week, I'd run in our pasture across from our farm, and I'd do shorter, faster, like 400 to 800 meter repeats. But I'd only do 4 of them. So, so there was a gully in our pasture. It was 400 meters. I would run at threshold. I'd run as fast as I could run to that gully, and then I'd dog trot to the other end of the pasture a quarter mile. So I did a 400 with a 400 jog at best. It was just, I didn't walk because there was something about the cry, don't walk.
Oh, for sure.
You dog trotted, and I'd get to the fence, and I'd run as slow as I could to that fence, because the minute I got to that fence, Beards,
boom,
I turned around and nailed it all the way back to that gully.
Yeah.
400 meters. And man, I'd get to that gully and jog down up the other side and dog trot to the other end of the pasture, another 400. And I would only do 4 of those. So I got 2 miles, if you did the math, of running. So that was 6 miles for the day. Some days I would do the full length of the pasture. And I tell you, I just kind of thought, I got to get used to this going a little longer. So I did 800, and I'd turn around and dog trot that 800 back, and then I'd do another one, and that would be it.
Right.
Now, I wasn't doing, but those were threshold. I mean, my heart was pounding. I was sucking wind.
Right.
And it really kind of taught me to suffer, because they were uncomfortable. It wasn't fun.
And part of being a good runner is, whether you're a guy or a gal, is you have to be able to learn how to suffer a little bit out there.
I use the word, there's dedication. And I don't know what your definition is. Dedication is, I'm going to run every day this summer. You dedicate yourself to a goal. Determination is, man, this doesn't feel so good, but I'm going to keep doing it.
Right.
You're determined. Or, gee, you wake up and you look outside, it's a little windy out today. I think I'll just take the day off. That's not determination. Determination is, no, I'm not going to let anything get in my way. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I like to think both of us were fairly determined.
Oh, we were done.
And I'm not bragging. It's just a fact of life.
But done. We both had a goal. We both wanted to keep improving our running. And I don't remember if you and I ever got together on runs, which we did, fairly often. I don't remember any weather that stopped us from getting out.
Oh, Beards, we have horror stories of I remember distinctly Karen driving me out to Aurora, west of Brookings, about 5 miles. And I ran because it was 30 below wind chill. And I ran back into Brookings with a tailwind. And even with the wind behind me, it's still brutally cold. And then I got into town, and I started running up and down the street. So when I had to go into the wind, I'd be in a residential area. And I got a 10-mile run in. 5 miles with the wind, and then 5 miles in the town. I just didn't want to do 10 miles zigzagging around town.
And Dan, I used to do the same thing. And we got, folks listening that are a younger generation than us or two. We didn't have
treadmills.
Treadmills, a lightweight running clothes that keep you warm. We look like the Michelin Man out there because we're so bulked up.
Multiple layers of sweats. Well, then, I can remember also blizzards. And and the whole issue, and us guys, I remember one time doing the 3M loop. Beards, we're running through knee-deep snow. It's the hardest goddamn 5-mile run of my life. Because I don't know if you know, but running through snowshoeing, that's why they invented the damn thing. You can't really go through deep snow without something to keep you above the snow. Well, we just plowed through. And usually one of us would take the lead and break trail. And then you let some other dude. It's like biking. You take turns pulling at the front, and you think of that and you go, "What were you guys thinking?" We were determined and we were dedicated. You have to kind of get that. In your head.
That's one of the reasons South Dakota State has such a tradition of being, back when we were there, Division II one of the powerhouses in cross country because we weren't afraid to get out there no matter what the weather. And if we had to run through a blizzard, we ran through a blizzard.
Exactly. And I think when the weather was crappy, we'd say this is more to our advantage.
Oh, yeah, and it was kind of fun, too.
Well, those West Coast schools didn't always like to come out and run in the Midwest. Speaking of weather, I'm going out to Brookings for the Summit League conference meet. I'll try not to rub
bring
this
your
in.
clothes. Bring your done.
32 degrees for the high and a chance of snow on Saturday.
Exactly.
And I'm just
You're going to have fun.
Dude, I wish I was running to stay warm. I'm going to have to wear long johns or something like that.
Yes.
All right, so high school, let's be honest. We ran because we loved it. We were determined. The structure really wasn't there. It was more of like, I kind of got a little bit of structure from those running camps and kind of the hard, easy principle. They taught me that. Don't go hard more than, if you do this. I usually, a lot of times I'd run that 2 miles around the inside of the pasture instead of doing intervals. That was my off days. But anyway, then you went to junior college.
Right.
I know that was Coach Folkrod. You go ahead.
Yes.
He really helped give you some structure.
Oh, absolutely. When I got into junior college and Coach Folkrod and, he took me under his wing and I was running twice a day and I was running, I was probably running 75 to 85 miles a week. And I really saw improvement in the various distances. And, he was a really good coach and he knew his stuff. And so, we do some hard days, some easy days. He tried to get me to do a rest day, but a rest day for me was maybe doing a 7 or 8 mile easy run, But, I really, once I got that structure there and had a coach that worked with me, it really did. My running really started to kind of, take off.
Well, and going back, I was just thinking, if anybody's listening and is curious, I averaged between my junior and senior year 42 miles a week. Now, for a high school kid, I don't think that's a bit of running. If you divide that by 7 days a week, that's 6 miles per day.
Right.
Now, some days I might have ran 10. Some days I might have ran 4. I don't think I ever went farther than 10. But, and then this transition from high school to college, man, did my miles. And I told this story one time that the day I finished the high school state track meet, my senior year, I was done. No more high school.
Right.
Track meet was yesterday, my final meet of my high school career. I went out for a 10-mile run the next day thinking I'm in college now. And 5-mile or 6-mile runs weren't going to do it anymore. And I know between my junior and senior year, I missed 3 days of running. You said, did you miss any days that you remember?
Not that I remember.
Very few. And then, SDSU, Jay Dirksen had us doing the mileage cards, which you inherited when you came to SDSU. And we rarely missed, I think I missed 1, 2, 3 days of running every summer. There was no, like you just said, the dedication was, unless you were sick, unless, there's family things, maybe I hate to say it, you had grandma and aunt passed away and you had your family was driving up there for a funeral and it just was like impossible to work a run in. Okay, get over it.
Right.
But unless there was a reason, we were going to get out and run. And so then the mileage jumped from, 40 for me to my freshman year. Like that summer, I have to look back. I have all those things. It was probably around 90 miles a week.
So Dunn, let me ask you this. So when you made that big jump, basically doubling your mileage, did any injuries pop up or anything?
It was summertime. I ran on gravel. I ran on grass. I would get up and I was still milking cows and beards. And it was so hot. And I'm not bragging, but I'm just going to tell you, this is what you got at the mindset I had. It would get hotter than blazes in South Dakota in the summertime. Right. I would get up because we usually try to milk about 5:30, no later than 6 a.m. because you want to be in early enough. You don't want to wait till 5:30, 6 o'clock at night to go out and milk. Be in by 9, go to back. So, but I would get up at 4:30, 5 a.m. and go do my 10-mile run, then go milk cows, then do chores. I'd kind of get my run in for the day before the heat. Because we didn't have air conditioning, the barn didn't have air conditioning, and we were doing field work and all that kind of stuff. Right. And so I remember, getting up it was a break of dawn, and I don't know if you remember Eric Holst was a famous runner from he was a high school record holder. He unfortunately passed away several years ago of a brain tumor, but he was an outstanding runner, ran for Cal Poly SLO and stuff. he wore a baseball hat in races. I had a baseball hat I wore that whole summer. That thing probably stunk so bad. But every morning I get up, I put my Eric Holst hat on because it's just kind of funny when you're in high school. You look at people and you go, well, Eric Holst wears his hat. And
sure.
He's a hell of a runner. Like, what difference? But I just kept the sweat out of my eyes.
Heck yeah.
And so I'm telling that story because, you got to kind of get that, I don't know if you call it the eye of the tiger. Remember that song? And you have to be determined. And I don't know where that determination comes from. The inner drive. We can get into psychology here if we want to, but I don't. You're trying to, get acceptance from people. And, I kind of boil it down to I'm always trying to be, you want to, if you can't love yourself,
right,
you got a problem. And if athletic performance makes you feel better about yourself, then maybe that's one of the things I went after, is to feel good about myself and to get that. I did love the recognition. I appreciate. I don't know if you heard Rod DeHaven's interview I did with him when you weren't available a few weeks ago. But
excellent.
He said, Mike, when I did that Jack 15 at age 10, and he goes, I got a ton of recognition. He goes, people were like, man, this is amazing. That's awesome. They told him he was amazing.
Sure.
But guess what? He showed up every year. I just got this thing in the mail from the Prairie Striders. They've done a history of the Jack 15, every finisher, every age group. And guess who's got the 10, 11, 12, 13 fastest ever Jack 15?
All Rod,
All
probably.
Rod DeHaven. He never missed the darn thing. And he admitted, I love the recognition. And that fed, you get into these happy hormones, these endorphins, these oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, these things that really make us feel good. It's a natural way of doing it. We can get into other forms of addiction, Beards, down the road somewhere, because I know you've got some interesting insights of that.
Sure.
But, the drive and the determination, it's still kind of a mystery to me how I did not understand. And Karen and I went out for our bike ride this morning, and what a gorgeous day. And, I see nobody out there on the road running, nobody out there on the road cycling. And you go, what is wrong with people? I mean, I still get that rush of joy and excitement and pleasure and self-satisfaction. And I think you do too.
Oh, absolutely.
you figure out a way to get it.
As slow as I run now, I still get that self-satisfaction.
You're you're walking still with your knee. You're still.
Oh, I am.
You are. I knew that. Anyway, and so then that just fed us to keep going. So now we're at SDSU, get very structured program from Jay Dirksen. He handed us our workouts for cross country and for track the first day of the season, and there it was. It was laid out, black and white, and unless you were sick, dead, or dying, that was what you were going to do. And
did he lay out the whole season?
The competitive season. He didn't give us anything in the summer, and he didn't give us anything in probably November through January.
But you knew your workouts from the days cross country started till it ended.
You knew how many times you were going to do Killer Hill. You knew how many times you were going to do.
Wow.
Yeah, because we knew it was like, this is our last time we have to go out to Killer Hill, which we'll talk about. It's a hill that was about 800 meters of loose dirt. There was a famous coach, Percy Cerretti. I don't know if I'm.
Yeah, Cerretti.
He coached Herb Elliott to the gold medal in Rome in 1960 and all this kind of stuff. He would have his athletes, Herb Elliott, running up sand dunes, barefooted. Beards, I can't walk in the sand, let alone try to run in the sand. Well, this loose dirt was kind of simulated that. You'd push, you'd running as fast as you could, but your foot, you got unstable. It's work. It's brutal.
It's got to be.
Oh, it's brutal. Well, we would do that once a week for about 6 weeks. Anyway, so very structured. I loved it. I think most of us kind of liked that. We didn't have to think. You just kind of, here's your workouts, do what it said. We went easy on the easy days because we knew how hard the hard days were going to be. And
the nice thing about that, too, is getting that 3-month plan is that mentally you can get yourself ready for that Killer Hill or whatever workout.
And every Sunday was a 20 miler in cross country. And so it wasn't like, what? We have to run 20 miles?
He doesn't spring it on Saturday.
And then we'd cut it down to 15 towards the national conference towards the end of the year. We'd kind of get a little rest. We wouldn't have to go quite so far. And so you kind of gravitated right into that. You seemed to jump in and thrive that fall of 78. I mean, you seemed to handle it and then some, no problem.
And well done. And what for me, when I was at Waseca, I don't recall. There might have been one or two guys on our team that were kind of into running. But man, when I got out to South Dakota State, man, to have the teammates I had out at SDSU, and a lot of them like yourself were past state high school champions. They were dedicated to the sport, and getting in with that group that was fired up as much as I was about running, especially you and I, because you and I hit it off like brothers right from the get-go.
Spirits, I always say.
Yeah, I know it. And that again, that took my running up another step up on the ladder.
There was nothing better, those SDSU years, and I think Rod spoke to it in our interview. He could have went to a bigger Division I school, and he kind of felt like some of those Division I schools, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but this is my interpretation. They're kind of like factories. They get these great athletes in, and a few of them rise to the top, and a lot of them fall by the wayside, and I don't know if they really feel that. What's that? The family atmosphere, the brothers, in arms sort of thing.
We had that at SDSU, man.
Very much so. I mean, we all had each other's back. We wanted to beat each other, but we wanted to help each other.
Yes.
And if somebody, I always said, Beard, you're one of the nicest guys I know. But in a race, it's a freaking knife fight.
Right.
If Beard sees you're hurting, he's going to put the hammer on you.
Put the hammer down,
like,
baby.
Oh, geez, Beard, I'm starting to get tired. Would you slow down? Yeah, no, that's not the way this works. Anyway, and so then, I don't know if we can get into a little bit post-college. And then we just kind of took what we were doing and built on it. Your mileage went up. And so I got a few notes here. I was going to kind of figure. Okay, I wanted to ask you this question. I didn't give you this to you in advance, so maybe I'll go first, and you can think your 4 favorite workouts. If you had just 4, Here's mine, and then maybe this will kind of give you an idea. The long run. The long run. I don't know. If you said what's your favorite, if you could never run again, or only could do one workout. Ron Clark, the great Australian runner, talked about this when he retired. He said he'll never give up his long run on Sundays with his mates down in wherever he lived in Australia.
Yeah.
Because these guys would get together and go out, and I think it was a 20 or 23-mile loop in the bush, the woods, the forest, whatever.
Sure.
And they had such a good time. They would talk, they would laugh, they'd joke. It wasn't a social jog. It was like a run. But he said, I love it. I could never give that up. I got to agree. I think the long run, either alone or with a group of people, you get done, you have that warm, fuzzy feeling that whole day. And the satisfaction of a long run, 15, 20 mile, whatever. That's probably my number one. And then, some kind of interval. I loved, anywhere from 200 to a mile intervals. 10 by 400 with a 1-minute recovery. When I wanted to get fit for a track or a 10K, 5K, 10K, if I could get on a track and do a 400 and basically at threshold, which is like 65, 66, 64,
sure.
420 pace. I only had to do, and you'd finish that and you'd be like, wow, I can't do another one of those back to back. Or if I did, it'd be like 800-meter race. I'm done. And then you get 1 minute. And because of our aerobic capacity, we could recover in a minute and go nail another one. Wasn't easy. And we do 10 of those suckers. And, it'd be the Brants, the Bills.
That's a workout.
Oh, it is. And, it's not a lot, but man, it would really, it's just like it bring you up a level. It'd really make 70-second pace feel pretty good.
Sure.
75 pace feel great. That would be my number 2. Number 3, fartlek. And there's so many forms of it. There's the freestyle. Fartlek is a Swedish term. People almost embarrassed to say the word fartlek.
For speed play.
Yeah, speed play. It's Swedish for speed play. And some great coach in Sweden, I think Gunder Haig was his athlete. He coined it and came up with it. And the classic is where you just run by how you feel as far as you want to go. If you feel great, man, I'm going to sprint. And you'd run 100 meters as fast as you could and get out of breath. Oh, boy, that was kind of fun.
There's no bad way. There's no wrong way of doing fartlek.
And that's you just run by feel. And maybe after you did that 100-meter, you go, I'm going to try going a half a mile this time. I mean, it's just spontaneous. And how long your recovery is up to you. I mean, it's kind of speed play. You're out there playing around with it. But it was a way to change gears. You do it. And you were getting a double workout. You're getting the cardio because it might be 5 to 10 miles of distance.
Exactly.
But you're getting speed work intermixed with it, kind of like in a race where you're changing gears sometimes. And so that's, then there's the structure. And I think that's what you and I might be a little more familiar with is, maybe you say, well, I'm going to do 1 minute pickup with a 30-second recovery, or 1-to-1, or 2-minute pickup with a 2-minute recovery, or no, maybe it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes with 1 minute in between. And we got later in our careers, we had the chronograph, the watch.
Yes.
And I remember doing them with you. You could set yours, you could program it to beep at intervals, so you didn't have to keep looking at the darn thing to say, is it time to go yet? Just take it easy. When you hear the beep, we'll go.
Go.
That sort of thing. And so, I guess that might be number 3. And then, number 4 just may not sound like the easy run. I mean, wasn't it fun when you'd say, I'm just going to go out for,
yes.
I'm going for a run. Well, how far
I wish I would have done more of those.
Oh, I know. There's, when you come back and there's like no pressure, you just go out for a run. And I usually did it with Al Stratmeyer. Al was my best buddy. And he was in high school. I was in college. And after college, he was, we could just, when I ran with Al, it was just fun. But anyway, what's your thoughts?
So for me, definitely my favorite run of the week was that 22 to 24 miler I would do on.
I was going to ask what's your long run. Was it?
Yeah, 22 every Sunday morning, 22 to 24 miles. But it wasn't just out. I'm slogging, getting my 20 plus miles in. So when I got hooked up with Coach Squires, he would have me do in that 22 plus mile run everything I'd done the previous 6 days. So there would have been some fartlek thrown in there, some long intervals, some sprints. And I'll tell you what, it made that 22 plus mile run go by so gosh dang quick done. And you were on a number of them with me.
I remember six easy, 1 on. And the 1 minute was like, boom. And I was always worried you're going to leave me out in the woods. But I could, in 1 minute, you couldn't get that. I could just kind of draft you for a minute. And then we'd run and then when we say comfortable, it was probably around 6-minute pace.
Right.
But we were fit. And so 6-minute pace felt good. And then that 1 minute. And that made that 20 miler feel like 10, if that.
It did.
Like, I can't believe anyway. So that's all right.
And so that was
your base,
without doubt, favorite. Then my next, I love fartlek. And, before I got hooked up with Coach Squires, I kind of did it like we were first discussing where, I'd see a red car up ahead. So dang, run as hard as I could to that red car. And then I'd kind of do I'd slow down and have a little recovery, and I'd pick out a big pine tree down the road. I'd run hard to there, But when I got hooked up with Coach Squires, then it was more of the, 10 times a minute and a half with a minute and a half recovery between. Now, the recoveries were probably at sub 6-minute pace. But when you're running at sub 5-minute pace for those pickups or even quite a ways under, man, it felt like you were jogging. And so I loved that kind. And then, I always liked my midweek not long run, but it was some midweek I'd always do like a 12 to 15 miler, just mainly steady going out, but at a pretty good clip, And probably my least favorite.
Go ahead.
So was I was not a big fan of doing stuff on the track. I think I might have went to the track in my build up for Boston maybe 3 times.
I remember reading your journal and saw some 800s on there and other stuff. But
I did some, or like Coach Squires would have me go out and like on these 22 milers, I'm throwing everything but the kitchen sink out there on the road. And then he'd go, on the way back in, I want you to find a track and do your last mile and, run it in 4:30 or something like that. And after doing 22 miles,
I seem to remember seeing you and Dean Matthews doing some track work, some 2:13, 2:12.
Yeah, we did some.
Those Yasso 800s. And when I look at your times, you pretty much nailed it. You could knock those suckers off in 2:12 with the, I can't remember how many you did. And at my level, when I was running 220s, I was doing my 800s in that 220 to 222.
Yeah.
Don't ask me how Yasso 800s work, because it's a mathematical. But
Dunn, you got to remember, the Yasso 800s weren't around when you and I were back.
Now that we look at it, I see they still worked, even though we didn't know we were doing them.
Because I would run a lot of those 800s and like 208 to 210.
I saw that. And so and then you ended up running that for a marathon. And
Right.
So, and if people don't know what a Yasso 800 is, look it up on the internet and you can read all about it.
Pretty cool.
Anyway, the other thing I can't believe we're going to run out of time.
I know
is,
it.
Cross training. I know, I'm just going to cut to it. You did a ton
Yeah.
of sit-ups. Always
Yes.
have.
Always, even to this day.
All right, good for you.
I do, 400 to 500 crunches every morning, and I do
push-ups for the
and I do 23
Yeah,
push-ups.
right.
And people say, "Why 23?"
Tell 'em.
Well, Don, it's for the 22 veterans that take their life every day, and then for the one present-day service person that takes their life every day by suicide. So I do that in honor of my son Andy and all those veterans out there and present-day servicemen. And then I've always done lots of crunches. It's just part of my daily routine. How about you?
Well, I did look back, and I hate to admit it, my best marathons, I went to. I do remember Nautilus, a company called Nautilus. Where you
sure.
could go and I don't think they exist anymore, but
I don't
they
think
were
so
weight
either.
Machines that were built on a cam system. So as you do curls, because curls, when you first get to that 90, it's easier to do in certain positions, and it gets harder to do in other positions.
Right.
Well, the cam would keep the effort consistent, so you could do more in the harder part and not as much, but it would be consistent. And you only had to do one set. It only took about 15 minutes to go through the 12 machines, do like 10 to 12 reps of each thing.
Yeah.
And I look back, and before Houston, I was in Sioux Falls. I went to a Nautilus for about 2 months, 3 months. Before Boston, I was doing them in Brookings had a Nautilus. And it was like $25 a month to join or something.
Sure.
It wasn't prohibitive. And I kind of look back and I thought, wow, my best marathons, I did some. And I'm not saying we're lifting for bulk here or anything.
No,
You can
no,
look at
not
either one of
distance
us and
runners.
say that never happened. And yet, I think that being a stronger athlete with core, your core, because you're only as good as your weakest link. And if you
Yes.
start getting side aches, you start getting low back cramps, anything, because that muscle's, you just haven't trained it to go through what you put it through. And so I think that's, I'd be interested. I should ask Rod. I think the SDSU team hits the weight room a couple days a week on their.
Well, and done. As I look back to my younger, faster days, I look back now and I see the runners, these runners, this generation now that, the hitting the weight room a couple, 2-3 times a week is a big part of their training. Again, you want to strengthen everything. That'll just make you a better runner.
Well, and back in the day, and I'm not going to sound like I'm that old, but I am. We
Yes,
grew
you
up on
are.
farms, and manual labor
Right.
kind of gave us that resistance training. I was carrying buckets of milk
Oh, and chucking
hay bales,
75-pound hay bales all
summer
day long.
And so our population now has very little opportunity built
Right.
in like that, like we did. I'm not going to. We could talk about stretching. Any comments about stretching, Beards?
What's that?
I know. And the school is, and maybe you can kick in, but they've done tons of studies. And, some people, I think it's kind of biological. People that stretch a lot and people who don't stretch at all, they follow them for periods of time. They both have about the same equal amount of injuries. Now, if you're one of those people that seem to do better with more stretching, less injuries, maybe we kind of learn that through trial and error. Keep doing it. If you're one of those guys who says, every time I stretch, it seems like I get hurt shortly thereafter, or something aches, or I strain something, maybe it's not so much for you.
And done. You know me, I was never much of a stretcher. I mean, I stretched my calves out in the morning, and that was about it. But I've even back in my younger days, if you said, hey, reach down and touch your toes. Yeah. Oh, I can get down to my kneecaps. That's about it.
I remember Rich Benio said, running makes you tighter. Well, who's to say that's not a function of the activity that makes you better at that activity? It's it's nature's way of saying, well, you're going to be in endurance. The problem with it, I think, is range of motion, and that's why I think shifting gears. Doing 200-meter strides, doing mile intervals, doing some hills. You're lengthening your stride, you're shortening your stride.
Yes, getting that leg turnover can be very important.
Much. And you're building, your ligaments and tendons are getting stretched and strained to become stronger, what have you. All right, last thing, and I think we'll be able to cut it off. And here's my, I don't know, as a physiologist, I always think back, before we, effort. When you say, hey, Beards, let's go for an easy run. In your gut, well, this feels easy to me. Now, for a sub-elite, non-elite, your easy run is their race pace. Let's be honest. So it's relative. And so you have to be kind of you gotta. I guess it's trial and error when you learn what's easy, what's moderate, and what's hard. And men are notorious for. I work with cardiac patients, and they'll tell you, "Oh, this is pretty easy," and they're sweating bullets, are all red in the face because male ego and pride doesn't want to ever say, "Man, this is hard," because for some reason we don't want to admit weakness or something. And so that's a dangerous thing. It's kind of it's like looking at art. I'm just amazed when people go, "Isn't that beautiful?" And you go, "Jesus, looks like some first grader or some monkey did it."
Well, yeah, it looks like somebody took the can of paint, just threw it on a piece of canvas.
If you show me a Terry Redlin or something like that, where
right, there you go.
I see what he painted. Man, that's amazing. He could. Well, anyway, so there's effort. Then there's the stopwatch came in, and I didn't even have one of those till I don't think I had one in college. The coach had one. He'd time us. But when we went out and did fartlek, I remember Jay Dirksen laying his watch on the dashboard of the car and said, "We're going to go for an hour of fartlek." Mike and Mark, I would always get hooked up with Mike Bills. Randy Fisher would go with Mark Bills. He tried to match us up to kind of push each other a little bit, be equally matched so one of us wasn't going to get driven into the ground. And he said, when you think an hour's about up, come on back to the car, take a look at the watch, and if you still got 10 minutes, head out for another 10 minutes. Now, when you think about this, you go, what? There was one watch for 10 guys? Yes, the coach had it. And he laid on the dashboard and locked the car so nobody could steal the darn thing. And you could look through the window and see how much time you have left. Anyway, and so that's, but then, running by time, I'd go to the track and you're timing your quarters, you're timing your 800s, you're timing your miles. Now, out on the road, fartlek, unless you just say, I'm going to run for a period of time, that's a good tool. So I'm going to go for 2 minutes. And then when the 2 minutes are up, I'll know it's done. Then heart rate came into the scene. I never used heart rate in running beards. I don't think
Nor did
heart rate monitors. Now they're very common, and I think everybody's got one. And I'm going to put on our website. I wrote up a thing one time about how to train through with a plan and how you can compare different levels of perceived exertion with different levels of heart rate. So what's easy should be a heart rate in this zone. And then we talk about zone training. And so, now, and you can use heart rate even for fartlek. I did it on my bike, usually indoors. I would ride my bike till I got my heart rate to like 90% of my maximum, let's say 150. Take the tension off. And as soon as my heart rate would drop below 120, guess what I would do? Crank it back up.
Tighten her up.
So you use your heart rate as your guide back and forth. Now, as you get fit, it takes longer to get your heart rate up to 150, and it drops really fast to 120. So and so the fitter you get, the longer the interval, the shorter the recovery. But if you're not,
that's not a bad way to do it if you're into that kind of stuff.
So lots of ways to skin that cat. I think the last thing I'm going to finish, I'll let you finish up yours, is training's like a jigsaw puzzle, and we all have the same pieces. I don't know if that makes sense. The long run, the intervals, the hill intervals, the crunch. We all got the same, tools in our toolbox. Now, how do you use them and assemble this puzzle? That's the
key.
Yeah, and we haven't even got into the recovery because, training is the key to success is training. Well, wait a minute. Training is actually breaking your body down.
Exactly. The key is recovery.
Recovery is when training occurs.
It's done. We'll talk more about that down the road because that's something that I wish, when I look back now, I wish my easy days would have been a lot easier than they were.
All right.
It is what it is.
All right.
Done another fun
Beards,
podcast.
You got to go, bud. Do you want to do the closing or should I?
Well, I just want to thank everybody for listening. And if you have any comments about the show, you can contact us directly at our website at beardsanddunpod.com or leave us a comment on our Facebook, Instagram, or X, all at Beards and Dun Pod.
Nice. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to hit the comment. We'd love to have you subscribe. And if you enjoy the podcast, interested in some merchandise, check out our website. And like I said, I'll post up some stuff since we talked about training, some training information on the extras on our website. So if anybody's interested, take a look at that. But Beard's always a joy, man.
Hey, you, right back at you, Mike. You have a good day, buddy.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.